Thank you for inviting me.
Now we had a quick chat last week, didn't we? And I remember coming across your profile on LinkedIn originally, thinking, "Wow, you've got an amazing background there." So it'd be great to find out more about you. And then we started speaking, and some of the things that you've done throughout your career, I think, are so relevant to what's going on within, the wider marketplace, not just in the SaaS world, but with all of the mergers and acquisitions and the strategic approach. 13 countries across Europe and all the differences that come with all the different cultures and how to approach it. So, yeah, I think it. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your time with us, basically. What I wanted to do is kind of give a quick intro to you. I mean, I was having another scan through, and your kind of career has led you to this point now where you're CEO, non-executive director, advisor, angel investor. But just looking at how it started with kind of Deloitte and Boston Consulting Group, some of the biggest names in the consulting world, moving to Auto One, growing them from a 2 million turnover to a 60 million turnover, phenomenal. And then uni places, building from scratch, then through to, how do you say, is it Uala?
Voila, yes.
Voila. And then obviously the multiple mergers and acquisitions, eventually becoming CEO of Treatwell. And yeah, so amazing kind of career. So yeah, keen to find out more about you. And I guess the sort of the first question would be, just talk me through your journey, really, your pathway to where you are now.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's been an interesting career now. I mean, listening to you describing it, it's like a little bit overwhelming. Anyways, it's been really rewarding. I was born professionally as a consultant. I spent more than 4 years at BCG. I work in the Milan office, but I also worked 1 year in Australia, in the Melbourne office of BCG, then back, and it was an amazing learning opportunity for me. There I really learned a lot about strategy, strategic planning, how to advise companies. And I also learned that I really enjoyed it. I enjoy getting into a room with senior people, trying to solve complex problems. But then once I was back from Australia, back in Milan, then I wanted to do something different. I wanted to, to do things actually and try this startup world, and that's why I joined Auto One, where I joined as a managing director for Italy. So at Auto One, we really, when I joined, there were 20, 30 people, and then when I left, there were 300 people in the company. So it was massive learning when it comes to, super fast execution, super fast growth. And then uni places where I learned about marketplaces, dynamics, demand, supply, conversion rates, traffic, all of these. And then, the Wall and Treatwell saga, with a lot of M&A and building the leading SaaS-enabled marketplace for building Europe. So yeah, and that's why I lived also in Madrid, in Paris, because we did some M&A with Walla. So that's why I moved to Madrid and Paris to integrate those companies, and then to London when I became CEO of Treatwell.
And what would you say that your career highlights have been then? If you had to pick out some of your top moments that maybe kind of shaped that route, that trajectory, how would you describe those?
I mean, if I look backward, there is often a dynamic it's the same pattern there, that I was never afraid to move. I was never afraid to relocate myself from Milan to Australia, BCG. When I was at uni, from Milan to Shanghai to study 6 months there. And then when I was at Walla, one day I really realized our Spanish post-merger integration phase with the Spanish company was not going as fast and as well as I wanted. And so I was like, you know what? I need to go to Madrid. I need to stay with the team. I need to be there. And then I did the same when it came to France, when we acquired the company, which was called Balinea. I was like, I really need to go there, work with the leadership team, integrate them. And so I think that deciding to be really on the field, in the places where my help was most wanted and valuable, hopefully, that kind of flexibility that really helped me during my career. Being with people, showing yourself committed, so much committed to move and to relocate yourself, So showing that commitment yourself and being able also to spend time outside the office, having a drink with the new colleagues and, getting to know them and helping them knowing you, the human part of you, because I was always the boss, the manager, the CEO, right? So it's a little bit difficult sometimes to close that gap, that hierarchical gap. But doing so really helped me being more approachable and being understood as well.
I suppose as a CEO, you're the ultimate problem solver, aren't you? And if you're not approachable, then how do you understand the problems on the ground level?
Yeah.
A lot of these conversations that I have, it all comes down to that leadership part. And I think the essence of it is leading by example, and you're creating that culture that everyone else can then follow. You're willing to do what, the hard stuff. So no one else has got an excuse.
Yeah.
So how would you then describe the difference then in responsibilities between, say, being a CEO or being a non-executive director or advisor? I mean, what's the kind of the nuances between those?
They share. Being a CEO or a top executive into a company, even a GM leading a country, and being an advisor or a non-executive director, you really share all the parts regarding strategy, right? Strategy setting, and then trying to understand how to develop the strategy into an action plan, actually action plans. So that's the common part. But then there is, especially with the CEO job, there is an element of loneliness that you really don't find when you are a GM and you have peers, other GMs, from other countries that you can, speak to, or you have even, managers, your CEO, your COO that you can speak to when you have a problem. Well, when you are an advisor, you are the one speaking, but you are not responsible for implementing the strategy, right? When you are the CEO, obviously you have a leadership team, you lead together with them. You cannot accomplish really much by leading alone, even if you're the big boss, right? The big CEO, you will soon find out that you don't really matter if your team doesn't follow you. And but there is a big element of loneliness there, especially if you don't have a senior chairman that can coach you, support you. You have investors, shareholders from one side, you have your executive team and the rest of the company looking at you and trying to find these answers, right? And in the end, at the end of the day, you are the one, taking a decision. The good ones, the bad ones are being blamed for them and never praised for the good ones, So that element is really different and is really difficult. And I guess that's why there are not so many CEOs out there, right? Because it can be really draining as well as a job, and not everyone has the skill set to be in that kind of high pressure, high loneliness situation.
So out of all of those, do you find that the CEO one is the most challenging?
Yeah, absolutely, by far. But not because you work more, or not because you need to solve more complex problems, because really that really does matter much. It's not really different from the GM or from the advisor. Intellectually is always really difficult, and challenging, which is exciting. But the element of the emotional part, the element of feeling lonely or feeling the one where every decision in the end comes to you, right? So that kind of high responsibility, it's tough. It's tough to handle, especially for many years, and especially when you are young. When you are in your first CEO role, then you get better at it. You become a little bit more detached, emotionally detached from the role, which is healthy and needed. But at the beginning, it's really tougher than the other roles. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, not that I've worked in any companies of that scale, but I can imagine if you're emotionally attached to all the decisions, when they don't go well, that can have a really negative effect. I
Yes.
mean, can you share any specific examples or instances then where you've kind of leveraged your unique skill set with a particularly complex situation?
I mean, yeah, every M&A is usually incredibly difficult and more difficult that the people involved were expecting to be, and especially when it comes to the PMI, to the post-merger integration phase. You know, you sign the deal, it's all great, you have a great adrenaline rush, you do a fantastic PR and a very good LinkedIn post. You win, right? You have won and you acquire the company, and from the after that's the second after the real tough job starts. You need to integrate, let's say, a couple of companies. The size doesn't really matter, okay? But there are always the same challenges that, you know, one company will feel they've been bought, so they've been defeated. So one leadership team will feel very frustrated, and they will want to show they actually deserve their jobs, right? And the cultures will be different. The cultures of two companies will never be the same. It's impossible, right? Especially if they were competitors. Usually they're really different. Um, and so there will be a culture clash there that you will need to manage. And then there will be, you know, different tech teams, different products, different technology that you need to integrate. So, and different markets as well, and brands, different brands that you need to consolidate, right? And, you know, all of a sudden you realize that 1 + 1 is not 2, but is 4, 5, you know, in terms of complexity that you need to handle. So I would say that there are two important skills that I think I was lucky enough to learn over time, which were, one is the ability to really use your emotional intelligence. You know, I'm an engineer, so I have a really high, I think, analytical intelligence, logical intelligence, right? And so learning also that the emotional intelligence is as important, if not more important, the more you get high in your career, and especially in this situation when there are different cultures and different people that you need to work with from one day to another, that is really important. And the other thing is being able to really simplify. I mean, in the end, you know, while I was doing the most recent M&A, I was having, I don't know, 25 direct reporting lines probably for many months. So not just for 1 or 2 months, 6, 7, 8 months, 12 months. So more than 20 reporting lines for sure. And different products to integrate, and, you know, different business models as well. And so I really could not humanly manage all of those information alone. My brain would not just be capable, you know, your bandwidth is not enough. That's it. And so you really need to simplify. And the question I used to ask to myself every day was like, okay, what are the 2, maximum 3 core things that I need to care about when it comes to this business? And if you identify those 2, 3 strategic pillars, then you are able to communicate them and over communicate them every day, multiple times a day, so that your leadership team knows what are the 2, 3 things that you look at and that really matter for you.
Yeah.
And then really execute against those 2, 3 things only, and that's it, and focus on them. And then when you master those 2, 3 things, then you can add another one and then another one, you know. But really oversimplifying, getting to the core of the challenge of your company, of your industry, and what matters is really important, together with emotional intelligence, in dealing these kind of super complex M&A situations.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with one of the transformation directors that led the O2 and Virgin Media
Well,
merger. And one of the things that came up was during that merger, when you're doing the financials, I mean, they're colossal, you know, 100,000 people kind of businesses. But where's the resources coming to deliver? Are you using like a BAU team to deliver it, how's that going to affect your BAU service? How's that going to affect your customers? The culture, as you were saying, the brands. I mean, there's so many different things you could take into perspective, but I really like what you're saying about simplifying it, especially for your leadership team. You know, if you're projecting those 2-3 things that you're focused on, then you can allow them to be a bit more granular with the levels down, and you know, all filter down. So I really like that.
Yeah.
One of the things we first mentioned, and this kind of leads on to it, was about strategy. And now you went and did the was it the Boston, sorry, the Harvard Business School, didn't you? The Management Excellence Program. And
Yeah.
were you doing that alongside your CEO role with Treatwell?
Yeah. I was lucky enough to be able to study at Harvard Business School, and then also, being a CEO. Yeah, I mean, the Harvard Business School executive programs are designed in a way that you really can manage the two things together, because you just carve out 1 week, let's say, every 6 months, and you really, focus intensively on the program at Harvard in Boston, you attend the Boston campus, so that you can really focus yourself for those 5-6 days, and then go back to your CEO role. Yeah.
Because you were looking at a lot of strategy, and one of the things that came up in the first call was about how there's a bit of a gap between what people sort of say strategy. A lot of leaders will band around the term strategy and strategic thinking, and then what actual strategy and strategic thinking is. So what would you say that gap is, and how would you identify it or explain it?
Oh gosh. So the first thing that they really teach you at any school when it comes to strategy is like, the time frame that strategy refers to. So when it comes to long-term stuff, that is probably strategic stuff. When it comes to more short-term term, impact or time frame or whatever you're discussing about, that is most likely to be tactical. So the first thing that I found funny, is when people refer to, and this very often, to things that have a very, short-term time frame or impact as a strategic thing, right? And so that is the first sign that, probably is not strategy. But most importantly, one of the things that also the mistakes I've done in the past when it comes to strategy and strategic planning is, doing a fantastic financial model, doing your spreadsheet, your variables, your input, output, etc., and thinking that that is the strategy. Your spreadsheet is the strategy of the company, and that is the strategic planning. And that was a mistake that I've done in the past as well, and I see that today many executives, especially CFOs, do. They just do a spreadsheet planning thing, and they believe that that is strategy. In the end, what I learned the hard way is that strategy is a way more deep concept. It starts with understanding what are the key fundamental problems and challenges that you want to address in your company, in your industry, and you really need to know what you're talking about to understand the real fundamental challenges of your industry, for example, and then try to address to think how to address those challenges, putting together a set of guiding policies that are set up in order to address the challenges, and then transform those into actions, clear action plans that then will give you, input for a financial planning, etc. So remember, there is never strategy without an element of action at the end of the strategic thinking process. So I would say that, if you're talking about strategy and you are not talking about ways on how to address fundamental challenges of your company and of your industry, then you probably are not talking about strategy.
There's so many things that you've said there. that kind of ring true. I mean, I'm reading Alex Hormozy's, is it $1 Million Leads at the moment? And he's talking about kind of almost working backwards, understanding those key problems, finding every problem to, every kind of objection your customers could potentially have, and then finding a solution for them by working backwards and using divergent thinking. And then obviously you get your tactics about how to build from there, don't you? So no, really like that. Great insight. I suppose the question would be then, from your career, where have you really well kind of implemented a strategic plan that's made a real kind of strategic difference? Or a significant difference, should I say?
Yeah, obviously my last assignment during the M&A and turnaround of Treatwell, there has been a big strategic rethinking of the company. Treatwell became, made a shift from a pure marketplace to a SaaS-enabled marketplace. I mean, if you download and use a Treatwell app, if you did that 5 years ago and you did that, a year ago or today, you wouldn't find much of a difference. So for the customers, for the users of Treatwell, they really didn't see what happened behind the scenes, but the whole strategy changed. We went from, organizing ourselves as a marketplace, investing in marketing in that way, etc., and shifting the operating model to a SaaS business, which is completely different. But, without going into the details, the important thing that we did was really understanding what was the main KPI we wanted to improve. Just one at the beginning, because there were so many things that we wanted to change and to improve according to what we thought was the best way to go back then. And then we focused just on that. We focused just on that for 1 year. And that was the first strategic pillar of a 3-year strategy that I had, in my mind. I had shared with my team, with my leadership team. And then after the company was kind of, let's say, brainwashed about that, the importance of that one KPI that we really need to turn around and to improve, then we said, okay, now the company digested that big change, the big shift. Now it's time to add another pillar, so another KPI together with the previous one. And then we did that until we got to the 3 strategic pillars. And we did that, I think, in a good way, because the company was able to digest the change, and we put focus on the right things, but in a step-by-step way, in order to give the company the time to digest the change, but also to understand the why and see the results as well of their actions, how those actions were impacting that KPI, and then that built trust and credibility as well into the executive team, and then we could add more complexity as well back into the company. So we went from complex thing to hyper simplification to then building a little bit of complexity back into the system.
Don't completely change the wheel, just alter it ever so slightly. I suppose that's going to be another thing. If you've gone through an acquisition and you're then trying to completely reinvent everything, you're probably going to lose half your workforce along the way. So it's a good approach. Then I suppose one of the other things we were discussing then was the nuances between the various different countries. And if you're leading a business that spreads or spans 13 countries across Europe, how do you deal with the different cultures and different communication styles, I guess? And I think you gave some quite good examples in the first call. So I'd just be keen to hear a little bit more about how you would kind of deal with those nuances.
So, first of all, to deal with cultural nuances, you need to know they are there. You need to know there are different cultures, right? And to know those different nuances, you really need to be exposed to the different cultures. So I was lucky enough during my journey in the past 4 or 5 years. I was lucky enough to live, in Italy. I'm Italian native, obviously, so I live in Italy. I know the Italian culture pretty well. Then, I lived in Madrid, and I found some things that are similar to the Italian culture, obviously, but some things that were slightly different. And then I went to France, to Paris, and then I went to the UK. So I was lucky enough to be exposed to the local culture. I went to the pubs, I went to the clubs, I went to the theater, I read books or local newspapers. So by doing that, I really realized how people speak in a different way as well. At the beginning, imagine an Italian comes to the UK, starts speaking to a British person and speaks an English, which is decent, but the way I was constructing a sentence was completely different from the way you do it as a British native citizen. Why? Because the Latin language is very logical. So, Mike, if I didn't believe you were doing something good, I will just tell you, hey, Mike, I think this is wrong. Now, if you are the CEO and you're just new, in the company, and you do this to a British person, the British person will think, what? Why you're being so direct, so rude, right? And maybe I should have said something a little bit different, like, hey, Mike, have you thought about this instead? Right? So more asking a question rather than being so directive. But if you do that with a Spanish one or with a Dutchie, they will think you are asking a genuine question. They will not think you're giving a feedback to you that really you need to do something different because this is not working. That a Dutch person or a Spanish person will prefer, hey, Mike, this is wrong, can you please adjust here? They will prefer this direct language. So that at the beginning, and even now I'm still learning, right, has been the biggest challenge. But the thing I solved this, the thing I overcame the challenge I learned was by doing many mistakes and by asking feedback all the time. So I really had to be open to feedback, to learn how people would, get certain ways of saying things versus others. And then, really being exposed to the culture. Today I go plenty of times to stand-up comedies, for example, in London. And by doing so, I really understand better the British humor and the way people say things, even controversial things in a way, And so I think that there is no book that can help you in that. You just need to be open to this, know that this is a thing, that if you want to be an executive, a manager or whatever in a multinational company and you have global ambitions of even global or multi-country leadership ambitions, you need to be open to learn the different cultural nuances and ask for feedback all the time.
So essentially, British were a bit sensitive.
I mean, it's just the way,
You communicate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought it's quite funny because it's true, isn't it? And I suppose when we go on holiday, someone might say something, you think, oh, that's a bit rude, but they're not rude at all. It's just that's the way that it's said. And I suppose one of the questions would be then, when you're making a strategic change across multiple locations and you're spreading a message, do you have to do that in different platforms, in different channels, different ways, using different language for each different country, or can you have like a unified message that would go out? I mean, what would your approach be there?
Oh, my style has always been pretty the same when it comes to these kind of things, which is I want to communicate once and I want to make sure that everyone gets the same message so that there is no room for interpretation. And I want to communicate once. Why? Because then I can repeat that message multiple times. So it's very important to repeat things multiple times to let them sink in especially in a big organization. It's never enough. You will need to over communicate, especially when it comes to strategy. Even if it is the 1 million times that you're doing so, it is important because there will be new hires that join the company. So it's always good. But in order to do so, you cannot multiply your message by your different channels and your different languages. You want one channel. We use, Slack or Teams or company meetings and one language. We use English, obviously. And so I really prefer communicating in one channel in one way and then repeating it over and over again in the same channels and maybe in different, slightly different ways, but always, let's say in a more detailed way, let's say over and over again, the more I repeat it. But yeah, that is the way I communicate usually.
No, and it makes perfect sense, because I understand that if it is misinterpreted, then you've almost got your business going in different directions. You do need it all to be channeled. One of the questions was around, I suppose, along the lines of like the ESG and sustainable goals and diversity. So do you have any tips on fostering an inclusive culture, within a unified business?
This is an incredibly important thing. Now, I believe that for companies to really do a better job when it comes to D&I or sustainability, is important to do few things, but structural. I mean, I'm not the kind of leader that, will put, the rainbow logo during June on LinkedIn just to celebrate diversity and inclusion during that month and then forgets about that, about the LGBTQ plus community the rest of the year. I'm not the guy that would say, you know what? Let's plant 100 trees this month and we've done our job when it comes to sustainability. I believe that it's incredibly, it's not fair. It's just not right. Okay, it's too easy. These are important matters, and I don't like easy solutions to complex matters. It's never the way. So what I advise and what I've done and I've seen that works well in the past is to do few things but structural. Like, for example, we want to make sure that there is more diversity in the leadership team of a company, right? We make sure that when it comes to recruiting at every level of the company, we put in place things that eliminate or reduce as much as possible any biases, gender bias, race bias. We eliminate pictures from the CV screening, or we really do things that are structural. Maybe we don't solve the problem exactly in that moment and with that one thing, but we build a system where one day, if we nurture those people that we hire, even in the lowest ranks of the organization, then we put in place a learning and development scheme for everyone. Eventually, our leadership team will become more diverse. Why? Because over time, those people that we hired with less biases, then we let them grow through the organization, and then eventually, in 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, whenever is the right time, the leadership. Same goes for sustainability. If we believe that we need to make sure our CO2 footprint, the CO2 footprint of the organization needs to improve, we don't change everything from one day to another, because that would lead to a mess, and then the organization will reject probably those changes. But we start becoming paperless. So we just do this one thing, and we train the organization on how to do that. And then we educate the organization about water usage, and then we do another thing over time in a structural way. Small steps, but structural.
I like that, because it ties in with everything else that you've been saying about, rather than doing tactical things here and now, it's looking at the long-term goals and putting steps and pillars in place that will take you there over 2, 5, 10 years. No, I like that. So one of well, I suppose the last question really was around your kind of successful journey, reflecting on it within the SaaS sector. What are the key moments, those critical decisions that have that's kind of influenced you along your career?
So there are many moments, but I will tell you a story. There was this super junior person in my team, we were a small company back then, we were 20, 30 people, no more. I was at one office in Milan. There was this super junior colleague. She's now a tremendous manager. Her name is Marcela. By the way, hi Mars, if you're watching this. So one night, one evening, she told me, Giampiero, I'm drinking half a bottle of wine, if not a full bottle of wine, every evening. I'm like, whoa, what's going on with you? It's, doing those credit collection calls is just crazy. It's driving me insane. I'm like, oh shit, this must be, I need to do something. I need to know better what's going on here. Why did this? I mean, credit collection is never easy, but she seemed really, struggling. And so the next day, I sat close to her and I started doing credit collection calls myself as well, together with her. And I was like, hey, to this dresser, to this other dresser. I did a few. I spent 2-3 hours, and then I stopped because I don't have the tough skin as Marcella does to do credit collection all day. And so I realized that, the problem was not with the value of our SaaS. No, they were using the SaaS. And so the value was there. They just didn't want to pay. And the reason why they were not paying is that in that moment was because there were not consequences for them not paying. So I said to Marcella, you know what? Just stop the SaaS for these hairdresser. Just stop it. The moment that they cannot access it anymore, if they're using it and if they give a value to our product because they're using it, they will pay eventually. You don't wanna unpaying clients just because you are afraid of losing this or that partner and then reducing your KPI on acquired salons, for example, or live partners, right? What we learned is that the second we stopped, them at they called the CX, they called the customer service immediately. We told them, look, there is an unpaid bill, and that's why we stopped. We gave you 2 calls, 3 emails, and they would pay 1 minute later and would send us the payment receipt from the bank. And we were like, bang, so the value is there. There were just no consequences, but the value was there because there was usage of the product. And so for a long time, the main, and when I say main, I say, 80% of incentive scheme of all the teams, in the company were focused on usage, active usage of the platform, of the SaaS, from salespeople to trainers to account manager. They were mainly incentivized on usage. So in the end, that was one of the main lessons. You can monetize a product if people find value in it, if you create value as well for the user. But in order to create value and for them to perceive it, they need to use your product. So that big principle, it seems stupid, it seems completely simplistic, but I can tell you, that quality over quantity kind of trade-off really paid off for us and made us build a sustainable lifetime value to CAC, set of KPIs and business that led Voila to then merge with Treatwell and become, this leading SaaS-enabled marketplace for beauty in Europe that is today.
Yeah, it's ties in a lot with the stuff that Alex Hormozy is also talking about in the book that I'm reading. It's the value, it's the perceived value, but having the balls really to say no, we're going to shut you off, especially when you want to grow and you want to scale and you want to make money.
Yeah.
You're battling with those demons, thinking, is that going to harm the brand? But you've got to have that confidence that you are providing enough value to your marketplace, to your customers, that you can do that, because it's a two-way street, isn't it? If you're providing a service, they need to pay for it. No, great. I really enjoyed that. One last question that I've sort of added in is really to do with more how do you maintain that peak kind of performance within business? Is there anything that you do in your personal life with regards to routines, diet, exercise? Are there any non-negotiables that you always do that help you kind of perform at the peak?
So I learned over time, especially in the past couple of years, that in order to be high performing, me personally, I really needed to take care of myself, including my mental health. So not only my body, try to exercise, try to have a healthy diet. I cook a lot, so hopefully my my food intake is healthy. Yeah, but also being able to take care of my mental health, following advice of having a coach and psychotherapist, that helped me a lot in really sometimes reducing the emotional part of my daily job and being a slightly more detached, but at the same time, way more centered. And your team perceives it, and your body and your mind as well. And so in the end, I found that really important. For me, today is non-negotiable to once every, 3-4 weeks, having my session with my coach, with my therapist. It's really important to understand if I'm balanced, if I'm getting a little bit out of balance, overworked, too much, energy drained, and so to get back on a more healthy, lifestyle. So I guess that is my non-negotiable thing today, and it worked well. It worked well.
I like that. I like that. Being able to recognise when you're slightly off kilter, having the support network there to lean on, and then being able to get yourself doing what you need to do in order to get yourself back on that even keel. No, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's been absolutely phenomenal speaking with you today. You've given some absolute gold there. Love that. I'm looking forward to sharing the video. I'll get some sound bites sent over to you as well. But no, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Mike. The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for inviting me, and happy to help in the future.
Fantastic. I will just stop the recording there.